So we've seen some surprisingly high quality Yeezys, and we've seen some really cheap Yeezys that have the look of quality, but lack all the substance, which causes people to question every single one of the Yeezy products, like I'm currently doing with the Yeezy 950. Is this actually a winter boot that you can depend on, or is it just an artistic representation of a winter boot, AKA fashion? That's what we're gonna find out by cutting this boot in half that costs us over $1,000 to find out the truth so that you don't have to. Before you skip this ad, this is one of the more real ads I've ever done, and I'm really curious if you guys like this style of ad or if you prefer the type where the brand makes me say whatever they want, word for word, verbatim. So stick around with me. Here we go. Thanks to Babbel for sponsoring this video, the language learning app. So when I park my car after work, I have to walk through a parking lot of a fairly nice restaurant. And over the last year, me and the valet guy named Jorge have slowly become pretty tight. We're pretty good pals. Because I see him twice a day. I walk past and we chat a little bit. But the problem is Jorge speaks about as much English as I speak Spanish, which is not enough to communicate effectively, at least not very well. And that's why I've recently started using Babbel to sponsor this video. And I say recently because, to be completely honest with you guys, I haven't been using Babbel for months and months or years like some people in these ads say. I've been using it for weeks, AKA since Babbel signed the contract for this ad. And that's when I realized everybody wants to learn a new language, and most of us have a very good life-enriching reason to learn a new language, like my old buddy Jorge, but we just don't do it. But once Babbel was downloaded, literally for this ad, and I started using it, I got hooked because I finally hit that trifecta for me of personal behavioral change, which is a good reason, convenience, and reinforcement. Because every time I've got some new Spanish to try out, I go straight to Jorge and he immediately laughs in my face. But I know he appreciates it, and it's brought a lot of joy to my life, if I'm being completely honest. So check out Babbel. It's scientifically proven to help you start speaking a new language in 3 weeks. Lessons are designed by language teachers, and Babbel offers a 20-day money-back guarantee. And they teach you a language in a way that you can actually use, even if your friend does laugh at you from time to time. So click the link and get 60% off your subscription, and thanks again to Babbel. So what is this boot and how is it positioned? Well, this is clearly the Yeezy 950, and that's about as much as anyone knows about this boot, because there's hardly any information on the internet, and it doesn't seem like Kanye does a lot of telling consumers what to expect and what to think about his footwear, even dating back all the way to October 2015 when this boot was released as part of Yeezy Season 1. And if you remember that release, the content was all about creating an atmosphere and a feeling rather than telling you exactly what's in the product and what the product is. It was much more of like a high fashion way of doing things. And unfortunately, the price also reflected the high fashion thing at $585. And out of the 3 Yeezys that were released, being the 350s and 750s, we've done videos on, links in the places that they were supposed to be, the 950 just didn't get as much attention and hype, partly because it's a giant military LL Bean looking boot, and partly because of those high fashion prices. So now, fast forward to 2023, 8 years later, they are hard to get your hands on. For those reasons, but also Adidas has wiped a ton of information from their site. There's only 1 pair of these available on StockX right now, and a lot of other recent things happening, which has resulted in the resale price of these bad boys being over $2,000. Right now, the only one on StockX is $2,080. So that's why there's hardly any of these boots on the market and hardly any information about these boots, and why there's tons of questions like, are they waterproof? Are they warm? Is this a Cordura ballistic nylon upper? Does this boot that has Boost in the title? Nope. Does it have Boost foam? Are they real boots, and are they worth that steep price of $585? And fortunately, we've cut apart hundreds of boots, including some winter boots, so we'll be using that information as our benchmark to judge this boot. And the first test is it waterproof? All the winter boots that we've tested in that series were all waterproof. So we took this one to the waterproof tank, dunked it for 5 minutes, and they leaked like a sieve. Not even remotely waterproof. At all. But what about the warmth? Does this boot actually keep your feet warm? Well, for this test, we are measuring the heat retention. So we have a very scientific way of testing this called a 125-degree microwave sock full of rice stuck in a boot, and measured the temperature before and after 20 minutes. So we stuck that in the boot, let it sit for 20 minutes on the Yeezy and the North Face, and the North Face dropped 25 degrees. And the Yeezys only dropped 30 degrees. So honestly, a lot better than I expected. And they will keep you fairly warm, at least initially. But we'll really see once we get it cut in half, is there insulation in here that's gonna maintain that heat retention for a long period of time, or is it just a short time? And that might be caused by the fact that this boot is nearly airtight, because we ran the breathability test on it and no smoke came out of anywhere. So we'll really see when it gets cut in half if and how it's insulated. But one thing we can tell is this ballistic nylon? And if there's 1 minute of this video that you're gonna watch, let it be this, because this is really cool, and because it's really cool and you can impress your friends with this little bit of knowledge. So what is ballistic nylon? You hear it talked about, especially with the Jordan 11s. Well, ballistic nylon is a term used to refer to any nylon that has a ballistic weave, which is typically a 2x2 weave or a 2x3 weave. And the interesting thing is ballistic nylon was originally developed by the DuPont Corporation for flak jackets in World War II. And airmen would use these jackets to protect themselves from flying debris and fragments caused by bullets and artillery shell impacts. And unfortunately, it was not very effective against most pistols and rifle bullets, let alone big old 20mm and 30mm autocannon shells. And thus, pretty shortly after, nylon was replaced by Kevlar, a more bullet-resistant fabric. So it turns out ballistic nylon is a little bit of a marketing jargony gimmick, if we're being honest. So is this ballistic nylon? Well, we put the macro lens on it and compared it to the ballistic nylon that was in the Jordan 11s, and they both look identical, and they're both a 2x2 weave. So both of these shoes technically have ballistic nylon, but it doesn't mean nearly as much as I thought it did. And just to triple check, we burned it to see if it acted like nylon, and it did, because it got goopy and it smelled like celery, compared to canvas on the inside that turns to ash and smells like burning paper. And we also noticed during the waterproof test that the nylon did not absorb any of the dye versus the canvas did. So everything points to this being true ballistic nylon, even though it doesn't really mean a whole lot. Until we did the puncture test. Because when we ran the puncture test on this, it took 138 pounds to puncture through the upper. And that's the second best we've ever done. Out of all the boots and shoes, all the thick leathers, this is the #2 puncture resistant boot we've ever seen. And that's partly because once we punctured it, we realized this entire shaft is lined with a big slab of leather. So the reason this is so rigid and like thick and substantial feeling is in between the ballistic nylon and the canvas liner, it's all lined with leather. So we thought there might be some hope, at least in the durability aspect of this boot. So we're like, well, let's try the outsole puncture test. And then we did the outsole puncture expecting some pretty decent results, but it only took 61 pounds to puncture through. One of the worst results that we've ever gotten, because if you compare this to the knit runner that we just did, the knit runner took 83 pounds to puncture through. So it takes 20 pounds less to puncture through this boot than that stupid yellow shoe. So some good, mostly bad. And to me, the jury's still out. There's still some hope for this thing. So let's cut this thing in half and finally find out the concrete truth about, are these real boots and are they worth the price? So let's cut them in half. Okay, we got these cut in half, and these were pretty tough to cut in half, if I'm being honest. Not because I think they're cool or I want to wear them, but they cost us over $1,000. So shameless request to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because that's how we pay for these boots to do these videos. So let's see what's inside. So does the Yeezy 950 have boost foam on the inside? That's that foam that has the little capsules that people really love, considered some of the softest, most comfortable foam in the entire world that Yeezy kind of put on the map with Adidas. No boost foam whatsoever. So that's officially answered. And if it's not the legendary boost foam, is it at least nice foam? No, it's just two different types of foams that are just chunked in there. They're not injection molded, they're not perfectly shaped, they're just chunks of foam, which if you look at this cross section compared to all the other boots that we've cut apart, the only time we see this style of construction is in sub $200 boots. And because usually for this price point, you're gonna see a higher quality foam and or injected foam that fits perfectly, not just blocks of foam. And basically the exact same story with the lasting material, which is just fiberboard. And I would expect to see a lot more premium of material, whether it's leather or wool for warmth or something, because fiberboard just isn't what you wanna see in a $585 boot. It's not that fiberboard is a bad material, but it is bad for this application and this price point. But there are some good things about this boot. It does have a leather counter cover. It is truly leather lined, which is also super wacky because one half is the normal brown leather color and the other half is this bright blue. What does it mean, Kanye? Explain this. Because it's not from the dye from the dunk tank, because the other boot has this exact same thing as well. Because if this is part of like some Illuminati conspiracy, like we found some kind of clue, let me in the Illuminati, I won't tell anybody. The other good things though, ballistic nylon, it's still cool, cool story, cool history. And it has like a little bit of a neoprene booty on the inside. And another little pop of random color, vibrant pink for the little toe stiffener. So with all that in mind, are the Yeezy 950s real boots? Well, yes and no, because they are not winter boots, they are not rain boots, and they aren't really boots in the real functional sense. But they are technically boots in form, definitely a fashion boot, made to look like a winter boot. So yes and no, mostly no though. And I would not trust these in any rain, in any cold weather, in anything. Basically, these are basically sneakers in the shape of a boot, which we've seen from Yeezy before and it has its own audience. But now you know that these are not real boots. These are just sneakers in the shape of a boot, or they're fashion boots. And then to the final question, are they worth the price? Well, if you took the Yeezy name off and you exorcised the hype demons out of it, and you just looked at it side by side compared to those other three boots that we mentioned, to me, the Yeezy 950s are about $300 to $400 overpriced. So if you want a pair of Yeezy 950s, now you know they are not waterproof, they are not warm, they don't have boost foam, they aren't really even real boots, and they're not really worth the price. But at least you do get true ballistic nylon, and now not only do you have an interesting fact added to your material science arsenal, but now you can feel justified giving the disapproving side eye to people wearing the Yeezy 950s. So thank you guys so much for everything you do, and subscribe if you wouldn't mind, because these boots were expensive as shit. So thank you guys so much for everything. See ya.